Hello and welcome. This is Eman Tasleem, and joining us today is Angeli Mae Cantillana. Hello.
Hello, it's so nice to be here, and thanks for welcoming me here in Islamabad. It's my first time here.
So, talking about Angeli, she is a former journalist based in Manila and she has extensive experience in climate and energy communication. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. So, as you said, I started as a journalist, mainly covering climate, migration, social issues, and also the issues experienced by Filipino migrant workers.
Okay.
And then I shifted my career into advocacy communication. So I became part of like humanitarian organizations, mainly covering climate issues, disaster impacts. But now I'm here more into the energy conversation space. But I would say that throughout my career, I would always consider myself as an observer and a
Okay.
storyteller because I just love like telling stories of the people and at the same time telling stories of the what we call the elite audiences and making sure that they are reaching the right audiences and like reaching the right people who
Yeah.
needs to hear the conversations and information.
Yeah, because storytelling basically makes it very easy for the audience, the people to understand complex issues like climate change
Like
that you're
climate,
working on.
exactly. Like often like when people think about climate, like it's revolves so much about the science. Like we're not lacking in like people or experts who are telling us the urgency of climate action, but like often it's not translated to the ground because like they don't necessarily understand what 1.5 degree Celsius threshold is. Like this is so complex for them, but at the same time it needs to be understood scientifically, but at the same time it has to be communicated in a way that will motivate them. Now will
Yeah.
be compelling for them and closer to the gut kind of conversations.
Yeah, and not to forget, she is also a part of global communication.
Yeah, so it
Right?
is a network of communications professionals working in the fields of climate and energy. So we do support institutions, think tanks, even community grassroots organizations into translating, again, these complex issues into something that is replicable or like distinguishable in their daily lives.
Okay. So, Anjali, today we'll focus on what Pakistan's rapidly growing solar sector can teach other countries and how Philippines view Pakistan's energy transition.
Sure, I'm happy to talk about it.
All right. So, let's start with our first question. So, Pakistan's energy transition has been driven by a rapid consumer-led adoption of the distributive solar. So, from a Philippines perspective, what stand out the most about this model?
Yeah, it's what you said. The transition being consumer led. Because in the Philippines, our energy discussions, much more the energy transition discussion, has always been shaped by institutions or how we are moving to energy transition or to renewable energy and clean energy is always with the institutions at the center of the discussions. But here in Pakistan, and hearing more about it in this conference why we're here right now, it's like so fascinating to really hear that like consumer is not just the ones benefiting from the transition, but are actually the ones in the middle of why this transition is happening, right? So I would say in the Philippines, there's a lot of laws, a lot of policies that are providing the imperatives for the energy transition. But what we learned from the Philippines and me being an outsider here in
Yeah.
Pakistan is that what is really teaching us is that when the consumers are at the center of the discussions or consumers are at the center of these imperatives, it can happen at scale. It can happen at speed, an unprecedented speed, I would say.
Yeah.
So this is something that like it took a while for us to see in our part of Asia. But I am hopeful to say that like that's also where the Philippines is heading. That's my hope. That's my hope. That like because a lot has changed since last year in terms of the discussions on energy transition in the Philippines, and my hope is just like that. Like the energy transition in the Philippines is also going to be consumer led, and consumer as the agents of the decision, but at the same time they are also pulling the strings or like being at the center of both the persuasion, the benefits and the gains, but also consumers will also be part of the problem solving for when the time comes that it needs to have some policy backing or like institutional frameworks behind this rapid, I would say that's how it has been described earlier, that we are seeing a Pakistan solar revolution that needs to be replicated in the world.
Yeah, so what elements of Pakistan's distributed solar journey do you think can be replicated or adopted by Philippines?
I would focus on three things: the financing, simplicity, and confidence.
All right.
So confidence is such a big word in this context because, like, in the Philippines, there's still a lot of fake news that is troubling or like stopping
Yeah,
people
there's so much
from-
to cater.
There's so much to cater, so much to consider because, like, there's still a lot of conversations around the Philippines. We experience like 20 typhoons a year on average. So it's like there's a lot of conversations that, oh, but if you go solar, how are you able to power it without the sun? Because like we experience heavy rains, heavy typhoons year round. So that's one of the things that is stopping people from actually considering getting a solar rooftop. And then the financing. I would say that the Philippines, like Pakistan, we do not have the limits, or we do not have the access to inexpensive solar. The problem in the Philippines is like cheaper solar availability does not necessarily translate to cheaper adoption. Because in the Philippines, there's a lot of factors to consider that forms part of the higher upfront cost for Filipinos. So imagine for Filipinos right now, like I would say, if I were to put a number, 30 to 40% of our income goes to our electricity alone. So that's a lot, right?
That's huge.
But still, for people who are trying to survive every day, like where would you find like $500,000 pesos? How is that in dollar? But anyway, like $500,000 pesos to fund solar adoption in your own households, right? So, and what's contributing to these factors are the VATs, the taxes, the permitting fees, and just the process of like buying all the equipment, like the inverters, the batteries are contributing to this high upfront cost that is discouraging Filipinos from adopting it. So even though we have access to inexpensive solar, it's not rapidly being taken up by those who are, that they want solar, but like, how are they able to finance it? Yeah, and then related to that, the friction and the simplicity, because in the Philippines, like it would take up to, like, I think now they're trying to reduce the net metering processes to 10 days, but historically it can be like at least 12 weeks. I know some people who tried to get solar installed in their rooftops, that it took them like 6 months to get the permits for net metering processes. So that alone is also discouraging.
Yeah, the
So,
delay.
The delay. So a lot of bottlenecks and red tapes for them to be able to connect their solar systems to the grids.
Okay, so what lessons can other countries in the global south can draw from Pakistan's experience in scaling distributed solar at a rapid pace?
Yeah, aside from that, it's like the simplicity in the process. What lessons can the Philippines and other global south countries can take is really putting consumers at the center of it all. So I would say, because like it's teaching us a lesson that like not all institutional interventions can provide what is urgently needed, or like can be replicable, or what is the essential needs that like people or businesses can be taking forward. So how I'm seeing the Pakistan solar rush, it is reactive in nature, wherein the people, when they're realizing the electricity prices are going up, it's affecting our businesses, it's affecting our lives, it's reactive in nature, right?
Yeah.
But come to think of it, like in 1-2 years, the very thing that they did as a reactive measure has become a proactive one, because like we see in the recent geopolitical conflict that like although Pakistan is not shielded from the economic impacts of the war, of the conflict, the power system, particularly on households and businesses, is there slightly cushioned than the rest. Yeah, even though that like Pakistan is not necessarily shielded from the economic impacts of the conflict, we have seen that like it has cushioned the household costs, the business operation costs, which is something that the Philippines, me in particular, me included, is like experiencing a lot as of the moment because I can tell you that my electricity bill has risen by 40%
Oh my God.
since February. Usually we would experience like an increase in electricity prices on summertime, our summertime, but it has never went to this scale. And the same thing for businesses. Like
Yeah.
most businesses are now seeing the electricity issue, the power issue, not just like as a necessity, but also an operational risk. So I guess like, and then if gonna go back to like what lessons can we take is that like putting consumers at the center of it is really the key to making sure that like energy transition will be reached and will be succeeded.
Okay, so looking ahead as Pakistan enter its next phase with the batteries and storage, where do you see the opportunity for collaboration and shared learning between Pakistan and Philippines?
Okay, so there was just an amazing discussion earlier this morning about it would be great if there is like a cohort of policymakers from the global south that would like actively share experiences and formalizing it because there's already a lot of like international inter-country platforms wherein they're able
Yeah.
to share their experiences, secure funding from developed countries. So I think that is one. Like if we are able to see that happening, like see like governments from the Philippines, from Pakistan, under the rest of Southeast Asia, coordinating to be able to to learn from what Pakistan has achieved, but also identifying potential bottlenecks in the future and already solving it before like anything happens it's a crucial step because like we have seen from the climate movement that like south-south connection has already achieved a lot. So if we are to see that in the context of energy transition discussion, then it is like it's a thing that is policymakers, the decision makers are learning from their experiences. So and that they will also be able to replicate solutions. They will be
Yeah.
able to address or preempt potential bottlenecks based on like the differences or based on like the different contexts that the countries is experiencing. So for example, like in the Philippines, we are an archipelagic country, so yeah, we have thousands of islands. So in
Yeah.
a lot of these islands, so connectivity alone is a problem. So actually, like it's just not a scale, but in the Philippines, like we also have experience in microgrids because they have no other choice. Like they're not connected to the grid, so they have to make do. They have to improvise. So imagine if this is something that is officially or formally being taken together as one South-South collaboration and learning platform, then much more can be done in terms of securing financing and like and again communicating the success of Pakistan's story to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and as you just mentioned about the policymakers, so I would like to ask that if policymakers and the industry leaders in the Philippines could take one key lesson from the Pakistan's energy transition, what would you hope that it would be?
Be decisive. Really.
Okay.
I would say be decisive because like where the consumers are, where the Filipinos are right now, it should also be taken not just like as a response, but also like a market and policy signals. Because there is a recent story in the Philippines showing numbers that like since the conflict happened, like the solar installers in the Philippines were getting like an increase of more than 500% in terms of inquiries on solar installations. Like how much is it to install a solar? Like how fast can you get a solar? So they've been getting a lot of those momentum. So yeah, so there is a momentum already, and like the policymakers, the industry should take it not just like a panic buying kind of situation, but it is a market signal and a policy signal that should be taken seriously, because like that's where the Philippines is headed.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and it's not, it's not just seen as a, again, it's not just seen as a temporary relief measure at the time when we're experiencing high electricity costs, and in effect we are experiencing high food prices, transportation costs. So it is, it should be considered as something that like our direction at the time
Yeah.
when we are needing solutions, at the time when the consumers want to take into their hands how will they manage these kinds of conflicts or this kind of economic impacts now and in the future.
Yeah, I really liked your answer about being decisive.
Yeah, it has to be decisive, because like the imperative is there. I would say, we always say this in the context of communications, that like the conflict, the energy crisis has done what like what no our renewable energy campaigns could do. Because like in just a month, like we have seen a lot of uptakes in terms of interests, and a lot of the inquiries, and a lot of fake news. Again, I'm going back to fake news because it's so rampant in the Philippines, like at being overcame. Because if you see in social media discussions alone, there was a time wherein people don't even know what solar is.
Yeah.
Like, but now the question is like, how do we do it? How can we lessen the upfront
Yeah, people
costs?
are curious about it.
Exactly, because they want it. They want it. It's just like they don't know how to start because of the price issues.
Exactly. Okay, so how do you bridge the information gap in climate communication?
Okay. That's a very loaded question. Primarily because I'm in this field, no? But in this trade, I always tell my students or my mentees that like, I've learned to talk about climate action without talking about climate. Because again, we were talking about this earlier, that like climate can be very sciencey, can be very technical, to the
Yeah.
point that like people are getting the impression that they cannot do anything about it, because I'm just one person, I'm just one community, I'm just part of one community. So what can we do about it? So nothing we can do about it. But like if we are able to take it granularly into the issues that matter most, depending on like who are we talking to. Like if it's the communities, talk about the food, talk about the cost of living. And if we're talking about to the policymakers, talk about like energy security. If we're talking to the businesses, talk about operational risks, because like the impacts of climate change, or the need for urgent action is seen in multifaceted ways. In the context of energy transition, the cost of living crisis, disasters, El Nino. This year is predicted to be like really bad in the Philippines. So if we are able to complement science with the stories,
Yeah.
to complement it like with what would make them move, then we are sure to, or like we are gonna inch closer to making sure that again the consumers, the people, are the center of the discussions. Because in the Philippines, I would say we are operating in a country that is, there has to be public demand first before something happens at the policy level. So like, but if we are able to mobilize the people, the communities, the businesses, and I want to stress the businesses, because like they hold a lot of decision-making powers in communities, in discussion. So we are able to inch closer to that goal of, number one, making sure that people are aware about climate impacts. Number two, communicating climate action.
Yes.
And number three, locking in these solutions for climate action and to be able to solve the climate impacts.
All right, so Angeli, thank you so much for sharing your insight. It was lovely having you with us today. So yeah, she told us not just to understand about Pakistan's growing solar landscape, but also how other countries or the global south countries can learn from Pakistan. So yeah, that was it for today's discussion. We learned about how important it is to know communicating about the climate crisis and things related to climate. So yeah, that's it for today's discussion. Thank you so much for joining us. And once again, thank you, Angeli, for being here today.
Thank you so much.
All right, goodbye.